Listen to this report. Supposedly, the Toronto Raptors still don't know what direction they want to take their franchise. Yep, Masai Ujiri does not know. So what we know is that if they trade one of OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam, they're going to trade the other one. Basically, if they trade either of those guys, that means the other one will be traded and they're going to build around Scottie Barnes. But if they keep them, it means they still want to run back this core, which is interesting. And I want to hear your thoughts down below before we continue today's video. What do you guys think should be what the Toronto Raptors do and why? I personally think at this point, Scottie Barnes is who you should build around. But I don't think you have to trade both Pascal and OG. Now, I think OG is better suited to build around Scottie Barnes, as if you're in the belief that Scottie Barnes is still that do-it-all guy while also being a facilitator, then having Pascal, in theory, who's also a ball-dominant, point forward, would be counterintuitive, while OG Anunoby can thrive as the secondary guy. Now, let's read what was written by our man from ESPN, Brian Windhorst. This is what we've heard right here. The Toronto Raptors appear to be at a crossroads with their roster, and that is manifesting itself with their continued search for a new head coach. The Raptors appear to be considering whether they should attempt to be a competitive immediately by keeping their roster together and retooling, or it would make sense to trade away some of their pieces to rebuild around Scottie Barnes. Now, we know Fred VanVleet's an unrestricted free agent, while OG Anunoby has been, one of the most rumored trade candidates over the past two transaction cycles. He's entering his final season of his contract. So Brian Windhorst said this on his podcast, quote, "So I think you have a fascinating situation happening in Toronto right now. And the reason it's fascinating is in talks to folks that have been in Toronto recently, the Raptors don't know which direction they're going. Whether or not they're going to focus on re-signing Fred VanVleet, extending Pascal Siakam, making some roster upgrades, or whether or not they're going to send Fred VanVleet in a sign and trade and maybe investigate moving on from OG Anunoby and or Pascal Siakam," end quote. And the Raptors have the same dilemma, but they had the same dilemma near the trade deadline, but they just traded for a guy in the name of Jakob Poeltl.
So the Toronto Raptors were in a similar position when they were at the deadline, and they decided to stay with the same core and trade for Jakob Poeltl. And they're supposedly back there, and they're interviewing a bunch of different coaches, and they don't know where they're going to go, and they're going to have to make a decision soon. And we'll probably know by the coach that they hire what decision they make. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts on what's going to happen. But again, I think it's Scottie Barnes.